All right, so we're recording, so we'll just get started so that you all are we're not too late in the day, especially since some of you are still at work. So I'm Christine Petto. I'm the chair of the history department, and I want to thank all of you for coming, participating to talk to our current students, and tell them about your experiences and. We hope that other students will be able to take a look at this, and we hope that we'll be able to repeat this many times before. So hopefully you'll have a good enough time that next time we send the request, you'll say, yes, I want to do this again. So thanks for coming. And I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Nakamura.
Thanks, Dr. Petto. I'm Dr. Byron Nakamura, and it's my really my great pleasure to host and moderate Beyond the Nest, right? Q&A with history alumni. I guess what we'll do is we'll entertain some questions from the students that we have. But before that, I'd like maybe to introduce have the panel introduce themselves, maybe briefly in alphabetical order. Tell a little bit about yourselves and what you've been up to since leaving the nest. Mm-hmm. So let me do this. Shrink myself down here. This is called an ego adjustment, right there. And let's see. There. So, shall we start with Matt?
I'd be glad to. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Benito. I am an alum from the class of 2014 now, I guess it is, and also the graduate class of 2018, which is very surprising for me to say out loud. Long story short, going to Southern has been one of the best decisions for my professional career. I went from being unemployed and underemployed to now being almost overemployed. I have always wanted a career in education, and thanks to Southern and the really great teachers program, I was able to leave with 2 degrees, a certification, and I was able to get my start into the education field really, really soon. Last year, during the craziness of 2020 and the pandemic and everything, I was still able to manage to find 2 jobs, thanks to the program that I was able to go to, and also the help from the wonderful professors that supported me along the way. In particular, Dr. Ammerman was really a big help in helping me find a position through the Fairfield Teachers Agency. So I have nothing but great things to say about Southern. The faculty have been really wonderful to me professionally, personally, as teachers, and I've always aspired to be the kind of educators that they are. And I feel like Southern has really prepared me for that. So I'm very grateful for everything that they've given me. And one of the reasons why I'm here is because I hope to give back in some way. So I would love to answer any questions and hopefully help anyone any way I can.
Thank you, Matt. Next, Daisha.
Hi, everyone. I'm Deja. I attended Southern from 2012 to 2017. I came in through the SCOP program and eventually graduated in 2017. Then I taught with New Haven Public Schools before being awarded a Fulbright Award to go to London, where I was until coronavirus. And then I came back to the States. I'm now currently a social studies teacher at PTech Norwalk, as well as an adjunct professor for Norwalk Community College, teaching Introduction to U.S. History, which is hilarious because Dr. Ammerman is the one who taught my course whenever I went to Southern. So yeah, I echo the sentiments that Matt said. Very much so looking forward to discussing and talking with you all and answering any questions. Can't say anything more than Matt already said about the history department and how lovely they are and how supportive.
Thanks very much, Daisha. Lauren, a few words?
Certainly. So I'm Lauren Casolo. I graduated from Southern and the Honors College in 2015. And I got my teaching certificate, but unlike my peers, I had a slightly more winding path because I didn't think it was the right fit for me. So Dr. McDaniel and Dr. Carter David in particular helped me end up at Georgia State University doing a fully funded public history master's degree. So I graduated from there in 2017, and since then I've been working in art and antique appraisals for art advisory firms, auction houses, and auxiliary insurance companies. So yeah, same. I absolutely adored being at Southern, and I'm really happy to be here today.
Sounds fascinating, Lauren. Next up, Sean, how are you?
Hey, good. I'm Sean Cleary. I graduated from the history department in 2010, and then again from Southern, from the business department with an MBA in 2017. I am a research analyst for the Connecticut General Assembly with a focus on housing, the environment, and human services. And in addition to that, I work with a firm, Cleary Energy, as a strategic advisor, helping them grow, into 18 states. And it all pulls back to, if you can research ancient Greco-Roman plumbing, you can dig into state statute all over the United States and in some of the territories. And find what you want to know there. And those are skills I learned in the capstone with Professor Nakamura. Yeah, that's what I got.
I just want to say that everything that Sean knows about Roman sewage, he learned from me.
That's right.
Thanks, Sean. Patrick.
Yeah, my name is Patrick Cumstone. I graduated from Southern with Lauren in 2015, and we were both in the honors program. So we worked closely together. Our advisor was the same for our thesis, our honors thesis, Dr. McDaniel. And I wrote in my little intro that that my experience at Southern and my experience in the honors program at Southern was definitely the most transformative of my life, just in terms of having the opportunities for not only research, but also field opportunities, and being able to get into a variety of different school systems. And before student teaching, I was able to get a little bit of experience in a private school with everything that I had going on at Southern. That definitely really helped me out. After graduating from Southern in 2015, I got a job just before the school year started in 2015, so August. I got a job at one of the many magnet schools in Hartford, and I taught there for 1 year, and it was definitely a life-changing experience, just in terms of it was an environment much different from what I was used to. And I learned a ton from it. And then I wound up after leaving there from the first year, I got a teaching job at Amity High School in Woodbridge. And so I'm there right now. I'm going in, this is my 5th year there. And I teach world history and cultural geography, sociology, stuff like that. So, but I always thank Southern for my experiences and for getting me where I am today. So if you have any questions, always welcome to field them.
Thanks very much, Patrick. Let's see if we can do that. Jessica, hello.
Hello, I'm Jessica Dooling, and I got my Bachelor of Arts in History in 2011, and I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do with it, so I continued with school, and I got my master's degree at Southern in History, and Dr. Petto was my thesis advisor, and during that time, I did an internship at the Norwalk Public Library History Room Archives. I did a TA in the geography department at Southern. I got into the Peabody Museum at Yale University, and I volunteered in anthropology and paleobotany. And I weaseled my way into getting a part-time job while I was in school as a security guard and working in the gift shop. And these things all sound very random and not connected, but every single one of those experiences led me to graduating and then applying to work at a Sterling Memorial Library at Yale University. And now I help patrons facilitate their research in the Manuscripts and Archives department. So Southern as the graduate school in history was the best thing that ever happened to me. It is something that I tell all our researchers and patrons who come in, undergrads who are working on their senior theses, if they're thinking about continuing their education. For me personally, it transformed me. So if you have any questions, please ask.
That's great. We like to hear that. Thanks. The check is in the mail. Next up, Donald.
Hello, I'm Donald Dosty. I got my BA at Southern in 2018. I came to Southern as a returning student in 2015 with the goal of getting into a PhD program, and Southern was very supportive of that. The department was very supportive, and I made it. I'm here at Temple University. I'm a second-year PhD student. I'm also a teaching assistant, which this semester means I'm assisting myself teaching my own two sections of Founding Philadelphia, which means this guy from Waterbury, Connecticut has to learn a lot about Philadelphia in order to be able to turn around and teach it to a whole bunch of undergrads who really don't want to learn it. So that's me in a nutshell.
Thanks, Donald. Elaine.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Gallanos. I graduated in December of 2017 with my history bachelor's degree. And in January of 2018, I went directly into the master's degree here at Southern for information and library science. And these two things were the best thing that I've ever done. I am able to take my knowledge that I learned from my history degree and bring it into the library world. I currently teach at a pre-K through 8 school in Waterbury. I teach at Jonathan Reed Elementary School, and I get to work with students of a whole variety from kindergartners all the way up through middle school. So I do take my history knowledge into library, and I work with researching, teach students how to use databases, and for the younger guys, we do more basic research, but that research history background really helped me in this career. I love it so much. I'm so grateful to Southern. And also when I was doing my master's degree, I was able to work as a graduate assistant, which got me into so many opportunities. And the library degree that I currently have is good for a library media specialist, which is my official title. I like to call myself a school librarian though, because that's really what I feel like. I feel more like a librarian, but I can be a school library media specialist, K through high school, or I'm also eligible to work in a public library as a children or teen librarian, which I did my internship in, and it was so awesome. I love being in the library. So I'm excited to answer all of you guys' questions, and I'm happy to be here.
Thanks very much. Megan?
Sorry, had to find the unmute button. Hi, everyone. My name is Megan Granfield. I graduated from Southern in 2014. I originally went to Southern thinking that I wanted to be a teacher, whether it was high school history teacher or possibly go into the collegiate level of teaching for history. But then after having some discussions with Dr. Madison, who was my advisor, and other professors, such as Professor Ammerman, I decided to go to law school after undergrad. So I went to Roger Williams University School of Law. Professor Ammerman actually wrote a recommendation letter, so thank you again. It was a 3-year program. I graduated from there in 2017. After that, I took the uniform bar exam, which is administered in 35 states, I believe now, across the United States, which essentially means if you pass with a high enough score, you could practice in 1, 2, or all of those states, which luckily I was able to pass with a high enough score to kind of go wherever I wanted. and wave into different bars for various states. So after that, I took a 1-year clerkship position with a judge out of New Jersey. After my 1-year clerkship ended, I took a job with a firm that was based in New York City, but had a satellite office in New Jersey, close to where I was living. So I would work there and commute into the city when I had to. It was a complex civil litigation job, which was not really up my alley. So I decided to leave that position and move back home. And now I'm working for a firm in Guilford, Connecticut, Sullivan, Griffith, and Beatty, primarily doing real estate related work. And hopefully we'll be learning the estate planning, probate, and estate administration matters. I think that being a history major and going to law school, people sometimes don't always think it goes hand in hand, but I think it really does for a lot of reasons. Being a history major with the amount of reading and writing and research that you do, certainly I felt prepared me for law school. And I had amazing support from all the professors and staff in the history department at Southern that I'm very grateful for. And, you know, I think it really helped prepare me, even though legal research and writing is definitely different from writing from a historical viewpoint. It definitely helped prepare me. And now, even in my job now, when I'm combing through records or looking at statutes and interpreting them from when they were first amended or put in place, and to looking at land records in the different vaults of city halls and stuff like that, and looking at different deeds that are dated into the 1800s. So bring a little bit of history with me throughout my work. And I'm very grateful for my time at Southern and how it helped prepare me. And I'm here to help answer any questions that anybody has about going to law school and how to bring history with you forward that way.
Thanks for the kind words, Megan. Hello, Catherine.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity to be here. And I echo everyone's sentiments on just how awesome the history department is. Dr. Nakamura was my thesis advisor as I came back to Southern in 2017 and finished up my thesis in 2020. And I had graduated initially undergrad in 2009. And that seems like a big gap. It was a recession then, so I didn't become a history teacher right away. I actually taught medical assistants and CNA students writing skills in adult ed. And from there, I got certified in credit diploma, which is basically, it's the alternative sector of education. It's your last stop, really, you know, after high school. If you drop out of high school, credit diploma is really where you can go to earn your diploma as a student. So I was helping in that program for a while, and in 2011, I became a Latin and history position opened up. So of course the history it's vitally crucial to everything I've done, but that was the thing that got my district to say, well, we'll hire you as a high school history teacher while you get certified to teach Latin, because I had Latin credits and Roman history credits. And that enabled them to kind of let the state know, well, she's getting certified, so we can have her in history and Latin. And in that year, I earned both certifications and earned an MS in instructional design at Quinnipiac, and then came back to Southern to the awesome history department. And currently I'm a full-time Latin teacher, so they're usually when my program sometimes loses enrollment, I'll go over to history, or I've taught extra classes in history while also teaching Latin. But again, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to students, and I'm happy to answer any questions anybody has.
Thank you, Catherine. And last but not least, Mark. Hello, Mark.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mark Osenko. So I guess I'm just realizing everyone's graduation dates. I graduated much before everyone here. I graduated in December of 2006. And my path to Southern, you know, getting out of the military, I kind of knew I wanted to be a teacher. And I knew that Southern had a great veterans program as well as a great teaching program. So I thought it was a great fit. So, you know, I enrolled at Southern, and in 06 of December, I graduated, and pretty much substitute teacher for a while. Then end of January, I got a job at a middle school in Bridgeport. And I worked there for about 7 years. The commute on the Merritt Parkway and the tunnel kind of got to me after 7 years. So I started looking closer, and I've been at Career High School in New Haven ever since. And I'm currently teaching 9th grade world history there. And, and everything I've learned, I'm not going to say anything new or anything different about the history department at Southern, all great things to say. I'm just going to pretty much echo everything that everybody's already said. But I would have to say that the history, what you learn in the history department can carry over into, various fields outside of just teaching. And you could just look at the panel today and kind of get an idea of what it can lead to. So any other questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
All right, thank you very much, Mark. Let me just turn that off. And I see we have some undergraduates. I'm sure all of you have a lot of questions to ask our panel of 11. You've all heard a little bit about themselves and their backstory and their connections to our department. So if you have any questions, let us know.
Yeah, so
Maybe if you could, maybe use the raise the hand button, and we can keep track that way.
So Marie, Annabelle, Ian, Tammy, if you have any questions, don't be shy. We have some that we've thought of, or students have sent us some, but you can also just unmute and we will hear what you have to say.
Yeah, hello guys. Thank you for putting this on so I can have some questions answered. But I'm just mainly curious about what are some programs inside the history department that maybe you guys have done, or maybe are current now, like internships that really got you finding that job after graduation. Because currently I just switched majors to history with like 80 credits, so I probably have about a year and a half left, even though I'm technically a senior. So I'm still trying to figure out exactly what to do with my history degree. But I guess what was kind of the road that led you to your career path now? I guess it's a pretty broad question, but I guess that's kind of the question I have.
I can answer that question. So depends on what your interests are, but one thing I did, actually my mom forced me, was just go to the local historical society and ask. And they are often very eager to have, especially unpaid help. So I was an archival intern to start, and that was a really nice stepping stone. But in particular, when I was at Southern, I remember the Connecticut Old State House had reached out to the history department, and the history department then dispersed the internship information. So I was a museum education intern there. And I did that the semester before I applied to grad school in public history, which involves museums, museum education, and that sort of thing. So, it's nice to dabble. I enjoyed both, but particularly the archives and like working with the stuff. So those are some leads. Hopefully that's helpful.
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
So it's not quite the history department, but I was a terrible guy way back when, and I walked across the hall to the poli-sci folks and did the legislative internship, where you do get to go kind of meet people from every sector. So if you're not quite sure what you want to do with history, again, as I said earlier, I took kind of the research stuff that I learned from the history department and kind of wandered off into government. So that CGA internship is, I think you can do it like 2 days a week, 4 hours a day. And you'll meet people from every other industry, which is tough to do, I think, especially in COVID. But especially as a younger person, and I can't see you, so I don't know if you're an adult educator or a student. But getting to meet people from all those different sectors was really, really helpful.
Yeah, I think I could jump in. And the best simplest advice I could give is just simply ask the faculty if they've heard any leads or they know anything. I've done that, and I can honestly say I've gotten about half a dozen different types of positions through my connections at Southern, specifically through the history faculty. Dr. Nakamura informed me about a project that the State Library of Connecticut was doing back in 2018 for the centennial anniversary of World War I. So I got a paid position through there, doing archival work and talking with the public who brought in World War I artifacts. So that got me some connections into archival work. The Dr. McDaniel and Dr. Ammerman, like I'd said previously, helped me get my full-time teaching position that I have now, in addition to my other position as a personal care assistant. So I was able to get those again because Dr. Ammerman wrote a letter of recommendation and let me know about other opportunities. I was also fortunate enough to be Dr. Ammerman's TA during a course in 2017. So that also gave me teaching experience before I even graduated. So the faculty has no shortage of connections, and they're always willing to help in any way they can. Even just this year, before my Southern email was deleted, I received an email about a jobs fair at Southern, and this was before I got my full-time job now. But I looked through it, and they had information about that the Census Bureau was hiring. So I was looking for work at the time. I just filled out an application, and then several months later, they got back to me and said, "You want to work for the summer?" And it came at the absolute perfect time, and it got me through, last summer, which was really crazy, as we all know. So even years after I've graduated, they're still coming in really handy for me. So just be in good contact with them and ask them if they've know or of any opportunities or heard of anything, and I'm sure they'll be happy to let you know. And more than likely than not, you'll probably get something really meaningful out of it. So I can't recommend just contacting the faculty enough. I'm sure they'll be just as happy to help you as all of us are.
And I guess I'll just kind of build off of that. I think that right now we live in this like really kind of interesting time that's so kind of unprecedented that, you can do a lot with your history degree, and we're kind of entering new territory. And so being able to be innovative and think about what kind of, instead of maybe not so much thinking about what job you can get, but also what can you kind of like contribute to this new field. I think that that's something that I've definitely been thinking about. And I think that more people are going to start thinking about, especially as our world continues to shape, and how the history profession, the history degree is going to, and how we are going to settle on that.
I would like to echo Lauren's point from earlier about going to a local historical society. While I was at Southern, I got an internship at the Mattatuck Museum in Waterbury. And at my time there, I was able to start a research project that snowballed into several papers that I did for several different classes at Southern, and eventually into an independent study that I did with Dr. Jason Smith, which I was able to turn that into an article that got published in Connecticut History Review. And without that, I don't think I would have gotten into a PhD program. That was really something that made my application stand out, particularly as someone who only had a bachelor's degree at that point, to have a published article, which actually at the time was under consideration. But that definitely was something that I wouldn't be here without that. And if it weren't for actually, it was an assignment for Dr. Thompson's class that sent us to go to a local historical society. And while I was there, I simply asked, "How many interns do you have?" And they said, "None. Are you interested?" And so sometimes they're going to be itching for people to help, and that could be you.
Well, this is a nice segue, actually, to a question that Dr. Beals has posed in chat, and I'll just read it for everybody. Seeing many alumni here who did an honors thesis or independent creative project, how important was that? And also study abroad?
So I could speak to the honors thesis and additional research projects, and that kind of launched me into. So when I was in the honors program, there was the required honors thesis, and I worked with Dr. McDaniel for a couple of years actually on looking at the Connecticut witch trials, and that developed, the thesis ended up developing into like a small publication through an independent press called Picton Press. They're not around anymore, but they used to publish like New England history and New England, a lot of genealogy. But from that one experience kind of launched me into just a general research interest. So I worked with, when I took one of Dr. Ammerman's classes, I did a longer paper on a Stony tribe leader named Tatanga Mani, and I worked with Dr. Ammerman to submit it to an academic journal. And even though it wasn't accepted, it was a really good experience to work through that whole process. And then those things eventually, with Dr. Paddock, he was the I think president of the New England Historical Association. And so I had the opportunity to do a couple of conferences after having graduated from Southern. This was like 2 or 3 years after. When I was in grad school at Trinity, I was able to present a couple of papers, having known Dr. Paddock, and then he invited me to an educators panel that was for the New England Historical Association. So just getting those research opportunities, even though they're not necessarily directly relevant to what you might end up doing, they do launch you into other prospective opportunities that could lead you somewhere else. It's a never-ending trail that that you get led to these new opportunities that are really helpful.
Jessica, can you say something about your archaeological study abroad project that you involved with?
Who was that for me?
Jessica?
Oh, Jessica. I was like,
Sorry, I didn't hear the first part. Sure. I spent a summer, I can't remember what year it was now, I think 2013, between finishing with my master's courses and starting to prepare my thesis. I went to Menorca, Spain for the summer, and for the Santa Sara Archaeology School. And I dug, they have a Mediterranean port there where there was a Roman cathedral that they found. And I spent the summer in the hot sun digging in the dirt, and they did classes in the afternoon. So we get up at 5 a.m. and drive out to the site, and we dig till lunch. And then afterwards we would analyze our journals, and we would clean off the material that we found, coins, pottery, human remains. And then we would work for like 7 days and we'd have a day off. And so I made connections there with some of the instructors and volunteers. And that kind of tied into me pursuing volunteer work at the Peabody Museum, because it sparked that inspiration. And similarly, to shake things up, when I was finishing my courses, I decided to create my own internship for 3 graduate credits. And I worked with Dr. Ammerman, and that's where I found this history room at the Norwalk Public Library. And that's when I got a taste for archival work. They put me down in the basement, and I was cataloging all of their local Norwalk artists, all of their flyers and artwork that they had donated to the library. And that didn't have a job at the end of it, but that had connections and something that I had never experienced before, which was I didn't ever think about applying history to a library setting, and I didn't have any intention of going to school for library science. And now I work in a library. So it all kind of interconnects. I was lost for a long time, in doing the internship and doing the volunteer work and going abroad for, even though I wasn't an anthropology major, I ended up volunteering in anthropology and paleobotany at the Peabody because of that experience which rolled into me being employed at Yale. So it's trying out those experiences and making connections to see what works for you.
I'd love to backpack off of Jessica talking about the library standpoint. I remember my my main paper for the history degree was based on women who found themselves out to sea in the 17th and 1800s. I did my paper with Dr. Metaxas. She still holds a very special place in my heart. I loved her so much. But she really helped me explore something that I never would have thought of in a million years. And now I focused a lot on like women pirates in my paper too. And I was able to speak at the Making History Happen conference that happened. Oh, that was such a great time too. Without doing that paper, I never would have had that experience and been able to represent Southern in that way. So I really loved doing that. But now learning all about those women pirates, I've taken that into my K-8 library, and kids love pirates. So, you know, it's nice to be able to make that connection. Here is some interesting reads about some real life pirates, and they go pretty crazy over those. So if I never did my history thesis, then I wouldn't be inspiring kids to learn about real life pirates. So it still stays with me. Even in my new career, I find them to be very interchangeable because I can take my memories from what I learned in my history career and bring them into the library world. Also, I'm able to collaborate with other social studies teachers too, and other younger elementary teachers as well. So we can do a whole bunch of different things. I can give them a book and we can read it together. We can do some nonfiction stuff. So I just, bringing all that together is really helpful. And it came a lot from writing that paper. And writing that paper also helped me write my master's thesis, which was not the easiest thing in the world.
Well, as you see, it's all interconnected. Marie, Annabelle, any thoughts? Do you have any questions? Well, I have a group of questions that we've taken from students who have written in and weren't able to attend. And this is a general one for the whole panel. Cindy writes, what's the hardest part of transitioning from being a college student to a full-time professional?
I think I can talk a little bit about this. My first take on that would be to perhaps not have the expectation that you're going to transition into full-time professional right away and realize that different opportunities are going to lead you there. So at the time, for me, when I graduated, I had already been tutoring, so I took up more opportunities. And I had tutored adults at the Whitney Center, and then the people who interviewed me in adult ed thought, well, that's great. You came from Southern, and they knew a lot of the history professors and loved that. So they loved the department, but they also loved the fact that, I had taken on this tutoring, which was kind of a part-time thing. And that just led to more part-time opportunities, kind of the idea like, okay, well, if you can tutor adults, then you can teach this program. And then maybe you can teach, these high school classes for these adults. And then from there, I was able to get an opportunity to eventually join the mainstream. So I think perhaps realizing that it's a transitional process, and not to close the door looking for only full-time. It's important to look for part-time opportunities. And at the same time, I'd actually come back to Southern to take classes non-matriculated. And I was also doing my own research. So there were a lot of different avenues I was pursuing in my immediate after college life that helped solidify where I am today. So I think that would be my response to that, is to embrace the part-time opportunities that will allow you to transition to the full-time.
Yeah. I would have to kind of agree with what Catherine was saying about kind of embracing that, look for other opportunities. And as far as, for me personally, my experience, I guess that's kind of a simple answer, but I guess the state thing was the learning never ends, I guess you could say, in the sense that, even though you graduate from college or in the profession, there's still a lot to learn. You're going to graduate, but you're not going to know everything. So, just kind of, looking for those opportunities to continue to educate yourself and, become more well-rounded in whatever profession you feel choose to be in.
I would have to say one big thing for me would be don't get discouraged. I remember being in the history field and thinking, if I don't become a history teacher, what am I going to do? And I was in this space where I felt stuck, and I was parking actually at Southern one day, and I saw this banner that said Library and Information Science, and it was just like a message. So now I was kind of balancing, do I want to continue and go down this history field, become a social studies teacher, or can I take what I learned and become a school librarian instead? And I really had to weigh my options. I liked both ideas, but what felt better to me was to go the librarian route. And I don't regret that at all. I would say just to take chances. If those opportunities arise and you think that it's the right thing to do, then go for it. Because if I stayed in the social studies teacher route, I probably would have gone back for my master's and done library down the road anyways. So if you see these things just jump out at you, take the opportunities that you can and run with it.
So I would say one of the biggest things starting out in a new place, in a new career, is there are just some generational differences you'll run into. Going from college with a bunch of 20-year-olds to a place of work with real adults, which I never considered myself when I was 22. I've had to teach interns how to address a piece of mail. That's something they just didn't know how to do before, which it's probably been 3 years since I had to do. So there's things like that, but also, finding someone where you end up that's open, professional, and making sure you get to lunch with them once a month, once every other month, and really finding a mentor that's involved, that's maybe a little further up in the career that you want to go to, that can, be frank with you and tell you, hey, you were half an hour late and someone noticed, lunch, you took lunch a little long, something like that. Or, you can't be using shorthand in your emails the way you are. It's just not acceptable at this firm or this wherever you ended up. So having someone you can have frank conversations with as a mentor that's got a couple of years ahead of you can help you avoid some mistakes that you might not know you're making in your first few weeks and months, that can really set the picture of who you are in the heads of those that are making hiring, firing, and salary decisions.
I want to just reiterate your point, Sean. I think that's a really good one, because one of the challenges I faced transitioning from school to the workforce was realizing that, okay, it's been 22 years and all of the sort of opportunities for feedback and mentorship are given to you in school because it's part of the structure of a school, and it's not necessarily in a workplace. So it has to be you that takes the initiative to find someone that can mentor you or give you honest feedback. It's almost like moving to a new city and making friends. It's not going to just happen. You kind of have to be the one that tries. So, don't be afraid. Oftentimes people are really excited to help new professionals. So just don't be shy, just like you wouldn't be in a classroom.
I also would like to say, first of all, can everybody hear me? I'm having a little bit of Wi-Fi problems.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So I would also like to say, transitioning from school to professional life, I think one of the big blocks that a lot of people face is that they tend to be afraid to ask questions and afraid to make mistakes. And I think that that's something that could really hinder growth and really negatively affect you. So like everybody else is saying, find somebody that you could ask questions to and kind of go to for guidance on simple things. But also don't be afraid to ask them in the first place, because I know for me, that was kind of a challenge at times. So, and it's also okay to admit that you don't know some things. And I think that shows a lot of initiative and growth as well. So that's very important.
All right, I think this is an interesting topic which can piggyback on this question here sent by Anonymous. And the question is, how did you learn about preparing of how to get a job, like giving a good interview, cover letters, writing resume, etc.?
While I was doing my student teaching, I mean, the days of the internet were pretty early back then, but I asked my cooperating teacher, going to the teaching field, I asked her for her suggestions, and kind of like what you guys are already talking about earlier is finding that person to kind of reach out to. So I reached out to somebody and I asked them, how to prepare for the interview, what should I be looking for, as far as creating my resume and cover letter and everything. So I kind of just asked somebody with experience. I kind of, seeked out that person, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I think I remember going to career services at Southern to help review a resume. So I know the resources were there. I'm sure a decade later, they're probably even better than they were then. But it's important also to just like, you've had a job in high school or college or a couple jobs, and interviewing there, and finding someone to just redo an interview with, because it's probably been a couple years.
And I was going to say, I think I remember in Dr. Rondinone's class for when we were student teaching. So when I was there, that was the last class you took while you were student teaching. He actually had a whole unit on that, where he gave out resources and templates and things like that. So I definitely looked at those materials and supplemented with my own research. But again, I do remember, that was just another great quality of being in that class in the history department. He actually took the time to walk us through those things.
Yeah, I think I remember there were being two classes, in which one of them we took in the history department, where the professor had invited back some former students who were then teachers. And it was a good panel discussion. And then I've since had the opportunity to participate on that panel. So it was really useful. And then the one other useful one, there was another class as well, where the professor brought in administrators from local school districts that were, they were there to ask kind of interview style questions. And one of the coincidences is that one of the administrators who was there ended up being my future administrator as a teacher. So, going to those types of panel discussions, as well as kind of those practice interviews that were offered, could be particularly useful, not just for the questions, but also for those future connections that you would never think you would make.
I think I could jump in. One thing that really helped me, I had mentioned before that Southern always helped me get lots of jobs, and those positions all came with interviews that, gave me experience with, going through the process, and gave me more experience with getting another job in the future. But one thing that really particularly helped me, and again, Dr. Emmerman was a big part of this, was they told me what a teacher's agency was. So after I graduated, I'd spent quite a bit of time applying to school districts and sending emails and going on websites and sending in applications and just getting nowhere. I found out about the Fairfield Teachers Agency, and they work to find you positions in exchange for part of your first year salary. And within literally like maybe 2 months, I found full-time employment. So, but before that, they also arranged several interviews for me with other potential positions before I accepted the ones that I am in now. So these, a teacher's agency can find you other positions besides in education, but that helped me get a lot of just experience with going to an interview and, you know, just going through the process, which I think is really the best type of experience there is. So I really can't recommend a hiring agency or some kind of employment agency enough. Have them do all the hard work and all the stressful heavy lifting. It's really worth the price you pay. And then you get your full-time experience, you get your foot in the door, and I really can't recommend it highly enough. So before that, it even comes with lots of interview experience as well. So you'll be able to get lots of opportunities to find new connections or new employment, and that will serve to help you, you know, no matter what you do. So I would definitely recommend a agency to help you out.
All right. Here's I don't know, another anonymous person who wrote in. How long did it take to pay off your student loans?
I didn't know we were done.
It's still happening.
Yeah, it's news to me that someone paid mine off. So thanks for telling me.
I think that I think obviously the teaching profession offers a lot of avenues for student loan forgiveness. I will say, I don't know if this is a kind of, I will say don't put too much bank into them. Just because sometimes the restrictions can kind of hold up, but we'll see what ends up happening in the next couple of years. But obviously teaching kind of has some avenues in terms of getting some debt paid off. I will say that for, I'm not sure if the program is still happening at Southern, the minority teachers, there's a minority teachers grant for teachers of color who wanted to enter the profession to get student loan forgiveness. I'm not sure if that program is still operating though.
Yeah, I got mine, I paid mine off, but a lot of that was because I worked full-time through college and defrayed all my living expenses. So I just had tuition on there. And it still took 10 years, but it happened. But I definitely say the value you're getting out of Southern is better than, you know, I have friends that are still have 150,000 in debt just from undergrad. Because they went to private school and didn't have much of an aid package and things like that. So, you know, even if you're still chipping away or expect to be chipping away as a student going into the real world, you still got a better deal than I think, you know, some of our friends in West Haven and Hamden at Quinnipiac and University of New Haven, particularly that are, you know, paying $50,000 and $60,000 a year in tuition versus whatever we're up to now, I think is in the 20s.
Yeah, I certainly don't want to speak on anyone else's behalf, but on my behalf, I will say the best advice that I got when I was at Southern was from Dr. McDaniel, who told me, don't get a master's degree without full funding. And thank God for that, because I mean, a lot of us didn't know what was normal or expected or savvy as someone applying to grad school. That said, I did need to get a loan for student, rather living expenses. So, you know, you kind of have to be a little strategic sometimes. But, you know, I think at this point, being 2021, we're all realizing how sort of common the marketplace is for degrees now. So everyone just needs to kind of make the right decision for themselves, it seems.
All right. We have another question posed by CJ. And I guess it's posed to those who have either have gone through grad school. And she writes, what most surprised you about grad school? Is it true that you'll have no life?
Perhaps speaking as someone who is in grad school at the moment, I should tackle this. I have the dual trouble of being in grad school and also being the father of a young child. My 7-year-old is in first grade going through this. I'd say most of us don't have a life because of COVID right now. but I don't think it's as bad as you're being led to believe. There was certainly culture shock when I first got here. I don't know if I realized how intense the workload would be, but I made it out more than it was. Looking back on my first semester, I'm doing much more right now than I was in my first semester, but I've got my feet underneath me, and I'm able to get through my workload much more easily than I would have thought I'd be able to. And were there places for me to go here in Philadelphia? I would definitely have time to go out and do those things. And the people who are in my cohort with me, both other PhD students and other master's students, we do find ways of socializing. We have little side meetings on Zoom sometimes. We use social media. So it is a lot of work, but you have more time than you might think. It's you're going to have your nose to the grindstone for quite a bit of time, but you're going to need to come up for air. And the professors that you're going to have in grad school understand that, and you'll be able to get your work done and still have a life. Now, if you're planning on going out to dancing 7 hours a day, no, you're not going to be able to do that, but you're going to be able to find time here and there.
I definitely echo that. Just someone coming out of my grad school, I obviously went to, I got my degree in London, but I was really surprised because I kind of took an untraditional route because I went from Southern, then went to full-time teaching, and then went into grad school after 2 years. And so I was actually a little shocked at how much time I had in comparison to teaching for 8.5 hours a day. But I definitely feel like I had a lot of time, and that time actually, I think that with the time that you have, I spent a lot of that time kind of like making connections, forming connections, and also reading. I did a lot of walking. I did a lot of kind of like exploring. Obviously, that was coming from an international perspective. So I was kind of like, rediscovering a city. But I definitely think that using the extra time that you have to kind of grow your mind was also beneficial for me, at least during my grad school experience. But I definitely wasn't kind of, behind the computer screen in a coffee shop with tears running down my face, like most people thought, at least how I thought it would be.
I want to agree with you on that, because I think some things in terms of university culture are not super transparent if you're applying. But I ended up in a program that was mostly people that worked full time and were going in the evenings. And then also was not an academic history master's, but it was more of an applied history program. And when you have that slight distinction, it does mean that at the end of my program, I wasn't doing like written comprehensive exams. I was just doing an oral and a project. And it was way less, nose in the book, crying, that sort of thing. And a lot more about hands-on experiences, internships, having a graduate research assistantship, that sort of thing. So and I would have been happy to have my nose in a book the whole time. But it also is just a matter of what the culture of your university is.
I also would like to chime in just from the law school perspective, because I know that to a lot of people hear law school and they automatically think you're up for 24 hours, you're not sleeping, and it's really scary. And I think a good way to approach not only law school, but any graduate program is to treat it like a job, right? You go in, you set your own schedule, you get on a routine, and you make sure that you give yourself time, because everybody needs time at the end of the day to decompress, go for a walk, go to the gym, have some good food, not just takeout food that's convenient. So I think treating any graduate program like a job will allow you to find other time in your day to go, not now during COVID, but go see friends, maybe go to a coffee shop, go walk around and do other things. And somebody gave me that advice before entering law school, and I really appreciated that, because that's how I went forward with my law school journey. And I think that it's applicable to any postgraduate work. Absolutely.
I guess I'll just add, I think all of us have definitely heard the grad school stereotypes of, you work 17 hours a day on all these complicated assignments and you have all these papers, and there's a grain of truth to that. I mean, you definitely are going to work harder at what you're aiming towards than anything you probably ever worked on in your life, and that's going to be a good thing. And at the end of it, you're going to feel more proud of yourself and more accomplished because of that than maybe any other thing in your life. But I certainly feel that, and now that I am working full time, I find myself really missing Southern more and more every day. I really recall fondly all the times in grad school where we were in really in-depth conversations, and the faculty, but also the connections you make with your fellow colleagues, and learning new things. And it's definitely a new, like any real new step in your life. It's going to be very new and slightly exciting, and maybe even a little bit intimidating. But I never felt miserable or angry or in a bad position at any time when I was in the grad school program at Southern. I think I even took more courses than I needed to. I was kind of like the plague. They couldn't get rid of me, and I still miss it to this day. So at the beginning stage, you're going to be a little nervous, and you're going to be a little overwhelmed maybe initially, but over time you'll find your systems and organization, and then by the time you leave it, which will be far sooner than you think, you'll be looking back at those memories and wishing that you were there again. So like I said, I just have nothing bad to say about any of the programs that they have there. So in due time, you'll be looking back fondly at those memories.
I'd say that my graduate time was definitely different than everybody else's. As far as I know, my degree was completely virtual. So I was doing this whole thing before it was necessary. We had asynchronous work. Basically, you logged into your classes when you had time. It was due at a specific time every week. You posted on chats and basically answered any questions that they had for the week. It wasn't going into the building and having group conversations. They were more over, online. So I did get to meet with some of my professors. Being a graduate assistant was extremely helpful for getting to know the faculty and working closely with them. But I also did reach out to a couple other people that were in the program with me for help, especially with one class in particular. I remember the cataloging class. If there's any other librarians out there, cataloging is not my thing. So I needed a lot of help with that. But there was other places like in the children's library courses that I shined, and I was able to help my other colleagues as well. But we all did it virtually. And, it was really just making your own schedule, making sure that you had time to get all of your things done. And a lot of the people that I was in graduate school with were already teachers who were transitioning from teaching to going to be librarians. So if they can do a full teaching day and then log on for their graduate courses, you guys definitely can do it too.
My experience is kind of along the same line as Elaine. Being a teacher as well, going to the field, I believe they give you, I want to say about 7 years in order to get your master's until you get your the next certification. I forget what it's called. And so, I did that. I took advantage of that. And I definitely went through a part-time so I didn't stress myself out, because I was afraid of, the whole stress of teaching a full-time and as well as trying to take a graduate classes. So, spacing it out definitely did help me out.
Yeah, so I did the MBA at the business school at Southern, and it was a hybrid. So it was half virtual and half on campus. And I was never any good at the online stuff because I'm an in-person kind of guy. You got to shake the professor's hand and buy him a beer and, make sure you get those extra points. But it was a great program that was affordable. Everyone, you know, we're adults when you're in a graduate program. You're expected to either have kids or a full-time job or some mix. And the workload's rigorous, and it definitely takes work. And if you don't like to read and write, you know, it's probably not for you. But yeah.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, I would just echo all of that in terms of just my advice for balance, I guess, would find a program that interests you, but also find a program that is kind of accommodating to your schedule. I mean, I know for me, it wasn't really an option to not work while I was going for my master's. Just, you know, I just got married, just bought a house, so there was no real option for me to just can the whole working thing. But I was lucky to be able to go to grad school part-time, still a lot of work, reading, writing. You know, you definitely want to make sure that you enjoy it. But I also did a lot of program research, and I knew that something like taking the GRE, like I went to grad school at Trinity, and Trinity was a GRE optional for admission. So I chose to, that was one of the reasons why it was kind of attractive to me. I didn't want to spend all this time while I was teaching, having to study for the GRE as well. But it also offered courses that I thought were super interesting. I took a museum exhibition course. That was great. And that was kind of the kind of work where it wasn't necessarily a lot of papers, but it was a lot of doing archival research and putting together kind of a mini exhibit. That was a lot of fun, and took an American comics class. So find a program that interests you, but that you're also able to balance with the rest of your life.
All right.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Just quickly, I was going to echo off of what Patrick said. I was right out of the bachelor's program, and not working during my degree was not an option for me either. So I packed in a full-time schedule and got all of my classes done in 3 semesters. And then I started working on my proposal, but I was working 2 part-time jobs. I was volunteering at least 6 to 8 hours a week, 3 days a week. I was doing the internship for credits. And then at one point I started TAing. So obviously after I got done with classes, I had some time that I could explore other options. But those first 3 semesters, it's completely different than undergrad. And I was certainly challenged. And I think I might have even gone in with a bit of a cocky attitude of how well I had done my junior and senior year in the program as an undergrad. And then when you get to grad school, you're with some extremely intelligent people and who have been in their field for a while, and you know, you got to catch up a little bit. But those challenges are what pushed me for everything that led. And it took me, I went in a fall of 2012, and I didn't graduate with my completed thesis until the spring of 2017. So some people would gawk and say that's a really long time. It took 5 years, but it went at my pace, and I did walk out with no debt for my graduate degree. So, and that was one of my goals. So I just had to take the time.
Well, we have a student who writes, did any extracurricular activities, history club, Phi Alpha Theta, student government, help with getting a job?
I can add some to this. I was extremely involved during my time at Southern, not only in terms of kind of like more academic clubs, but also just in terms of residence life. I lived on campus, and I can definitely say that I definitely think I underestimated just how much I was learning while being involved. The programming, I was a programming chair I was a hall council president in my residence hall, then eventually went on to be programming chair for the Residence Hall Association. And a lot of that programming experience ended up helping me this last summer for my, I was also a public history major, master's, Lauren, by the way. And so my final project was to essentially facilitate a transatlantic conversation between the UK and the US through a series of different conversations about, race and literature and art. And it was really awesome because so much of that programming experience that I got from my extracurricular activities lended itself perfectly to it, where I was able to kind of like, oh yeah, we have to program this and program that. And so I think that definitely being involved. So just because it doesn't necessarily lend itself to history doesn't mean that you can't use those skills that you get from those programs or get from those activities. It really, really ends up helping later. I think being involved definitely has helped me to shape my career aspects, also as well as just being much more well-rounded. So I definitely recommend getting involved during the time at Southern.
I'm so glad you said that, because my gut reaction was like, not really, but only in the sense that I think that there's a slight misconception once you get to college that if you just add certain ingredients, you'll have a resume that's desirable for an employer. And that's just, I mean, in terms of student life stuff, I didn't find it particularly valuable for me, but it's the skills and the sort of interpersonal opportunities that arise from those things that makes you, I would say, a better candidate for other things in the future. If you're looking for an equation or a magic sort of spell to get you on, you know, an HR person's desk, that probably won't be it, but it certainly helps to be more well-rounded, like you said.
Yes, I would definitely have to also echo what Daisha and Lauren said. I was in Phi Alpha Theta, so of course I had that on my resume, but I felt that what was mostly asked at interviews was about my graduate assistant experience. So I think that it was nice to have the extra club that I was a part of. I also am a member of the Daughters of the American Revolution, so I did some things with them that I was able to put on my resume as well. But again, what I was really asked about was my experience being that graduate assistant and what I did and how I was chosen for that and all those other things. So I'd say for the most part, if those types of experiences come your way, always say yes. But clubs are always great to be a part of. That shows that you're well-rounded.
And just to add on to that, just something I'm kind of passionate about, but I think also in addition to that, making sure that whenever you are getting involved, that you're really taking the best out of the experience and not just kind of solely going into something just because you think it might benefit you later. I think that throughout my entire career, I was telling my mom, I think last summer was the first summer that I didn't work from 2012. So the moment I got into Southern, every single summer, whether I was being orientation ambassador, whether that was being a desk attendant, I was always working, but I don't think that I was ever doing it necessarily to get a job later. I think I was more taking the opportunity as they came in that moment. And so, and I think that goes to your graduate degree as well. I think being able to really articulate why you participated in things is going to be really important, and also really sucking the best that you can, whether that be out of graduate school, really taking your classes seriously rather than just trying to get the good grade. I think that whenever you get to that interview stage and you're able to articulate, this is really how I've grown as a person, that's really what people are looking for. And that's going to help you to be able to explain how you're going to actually be able to do whatever job you want to go in.
Dr. Nakamura, can we see if either Marie, Annabelle, or Tammy has been able to come back? If they have any questions now that they've listened to some of the questions that came up?
Please chime in.
Marie has to find her mute button. There you
go. Basically, and I'm not being negative at all. I am here as an observer. I'm a senior and I've already had a career, and I came back to love and enjoy history, and it's been great to listen to all your accomplishments. I probably have about a couple more years to finish up to get a bachelor's. I never even got a bachelor's when I was a young person. So this is a big thrill for me to be here. And like I said, listening to all your achievements is just so inspiring to me. Once I get my bachelor's, I don't have any real plans to do anything with it, but it's just been great and it's been fun. And it's expanded my mind. And I thank you all and congratulate all of you on all your achievements.
Thanks, Marie. Annabelle and Tammy, do you have any questions? Annabelle doesn't have any questions. Tammy, you're doing an internship up at the State House, right? State House or?
Yeah, yeah. I'm so sorry. I had to leave early for a meeting. Then I really wanted to come back to ask this one question. I'm not sure if it's been asked already. So basically, when I first came to Southern, my goal was to, do business management because that's what everyone else was telling me to do. I didn't know what I liked, like originally. I was just like, I was confused. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was just listening to everybody else. And then I sat down one day with the orientation ambassador and they asked me, so is that really what you want to do? Like, what do you like? And I'm like, you know what? I'm really interested in history. And then it took me a while to think about like how I love to talk to people and how I love to teach people like the things that I know. And I was like, wait, I want to be a teacher. And so my question is to you all, I'm not sure if it's been asked already, but why did you choose history? Like, what about history like resonated with you? Like, why history? Why not engineering? Why not science? Like, history is that one major that everyone looks down at because they're like, what do you even do with that? And I'm like, what do you even mean? Like just from hearing all of your experiences, you can do a lot with history and it's valuable. It's like, it's that diamond in the rough. So like, why did you all choose history?
I guess I'll start. Very simply, it's the only really thing I've ever been good at. When I was well before I got to Southern, I was probably a mediocre student at best. Floated through high school, no real academic accomplishments. Certainly wasn't an athlete. And, I was just very, very mediocre. And during those times, the only real enjoyment I ever got out of school was in social studies class. And I had good teachers and I've had bad teachers. And I thought, if I had an opportunity to go over this stuff or to teach an entire class of interested minds this subject, I think I could do that. And I've never considered any other type of fields since. And now I have a job where I have an 8th grade class that's all really bright kids, and I get paid to talk about World War I and World War II. And I leave and I feel like I'm stealing from the school district because I get to do kind of what I'm doing now, just talk with a bunch of, smart people about history. And that's just fun for me. So, I wouldn't consider going into anything else. I wouldn't consider some type of, desk job where I'm at a computer all day and I don't really talk to anyone. So yeah, teaching has its, stressful days, but I couldn't possibly consider any other field. And that was another reason why I enjoyed the grad program so much. Is I had fun, believe it or not, in some of the classes and all the classes. When you're studying whatever you're truly interested in, it's not work in the sense of you feel like you're burdened with something. So I think all of us have experienced that in our own ways with both the faculty and history itself. So if you love it, then just go for it, and you'll find that you won't have that kind of stress that some of our other friends in other positions have, and where they're miserable and they feel like they're not making a difference. So I wouldn't think of any other type of position other than history or education. So if you feel the same way, I'm sure that you'll find that type of that contentment and that position that you're looking for.
I'll just say I've always been. I think I've always been obsessed with the past. I've loved it since I was really as young as I can remember. I've always been obsessed with the past. But I think that when I went to Southern and then continued on in my studies, I think I've seen it. It's not so much really a love. I think history matters is, I guess, what I'm trying to say. It matters. And I think for much of our society, and typically whenever you talk to students or you hear people talk about history, they kind of see it as more being ornamental or decorative. It's nice to have, it's nice to talk about, but in reality, it's really meaningful. And I think that on the backdrop of everything that we've been through this year, history has been even more relevant. It's kind of interesting talking to people about, oh yeah, history, what's going to happen with the profession, what's happening with, PhDs, and what's going to happen to the historian field. But at the same time, all our society can talk about right now is history, the meanings of it. And so I think that there's a particular usefulness in being a witness, as James Baldwin says, in this time period, and to be the person who's going to interpret how we're going to understand the past. And so it's much more useful. And that's the reason why you can use it in so many different professions. And so I think that's kind of why I've always leaned towards it and why it's always been a huge part of my life.
So I always found history to be the easiest class for me to actually retain, because it just felt like story time. So you'd go in and you'd take some notes on the lecture, but and you'd do your reading, but I never had to study history because it was just so easy to retain. Not always the exact dates, but the general outlines and just stories and figures that have just built the Western world or the Eastern world, depending on which class you're in. But the hard part was once I figured out, once I was in the classroom for an internship, the hard part was figuring out what to do once I didn't want to be a teacher with a history degree. And that's, Tammy, actually right where I ended up at that State House CGA internship, which opened a lot of doors. And I've just kind of stuck around in government doing research there. So I know it's a weird year up there this year that you're not in person. It's a little harder to build those relationships. But if you can, every time you can get in front of your member that you're working with there, or deal with the aid of the member, I'd suggest taking every opportunity there and learning whatever you can about the process. Because I've been there and been happy for 6 or 7 years now, after figuring out I didn't want to teach history. So there are those opportunities.
Tammy, can you tell us what you're doing, or tell the group what they're doing? I know what you're doing because I signed your internship form, but what are you doing up there?
Yeah, so I'm an intern at the Connecticut State Department of Education. I'm working with Mr. Steve Armstrong. He's a social studies consultant there. And currently, well, at first, I just was sending out e-blasts, of upcoming events, especially with Black History Month and ways. And I did a lot of research on giving links to inform the public on what Black History Month is and what they can learn from it. And so far, I've been going to meetings every week. We're discussing learning recovery, especially for students who are struggling because of the pandemic. A lot of students have struggled with schooling, and they've fallen behind because of this whole change in their environment. Now they're home instead of at the schoolhouse. And, it could be a good thing for some students, and it can be a really bad thing for some students. It can have a huge, huge toll on their mental health, on their emotional health, and everything. So we're working on ways to help educators find structure in how they can help develop students, especially in this unique situation, especially like virtually and everything. So that's been really awesome. And I'm now part of developing a curriculum for African American and Latino studies. It's going to be a part of it's going to be a part of the high school systems in, like, I think the next year or maybe 2 years. We're currently working on that, and I'm helping out emphasizing what parts should be taught in the classrooms. I'm finding resources on how teachers can teach this valuable information. You have to go into it with passion. You can't just teach it like it's a flat piece of bread, you know. There's a message behind this type of history, and it needs to be taught in a way that shows that there's a message, and African Americans and Latinos have been silent for too long, and their history is finally coming to light. And yeah, that's what I've been doing so far. It's been an incredible 3 or 4 weeks, and I'm actually going to be a part of in the next couple of months, I think in September, the CCSS, Connecticut Council for the Social Studies. Apparently, I'm going to be the first pre-service teacher there, so that's going to be an amazing opportunity to be a part of as well. So yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Thank you, Tammy. And I should say that for all the students that might hear this recording, that Tammy is really on the ball. Tammy reminds me a bit of Matt and Jessica, who would send me emails and say, so I found this opportunity, or do you know if there's any positions, or are there any jobs, or I think I might want to do this. And it's that, other people have also said it, it's that, always, Elaine mentioned it too, seeking those opportunities. And Tammy emailed me, she emailed Professor Falvey, who's our certification coordinator, and this came up, and Professor Falvey, she said, Tammy, we need to see if Tammy's interested in this. So you're a real go-getter. So good for you.
Thank you so much.
And I'll say, you know, we've mentioned it a couple times tonight, Tammy, but you're on the cutting edge of history, because Connecticut's the first state in the nation to actually require a course in Black and Latino studies. So you're the first one in the United States helping to put that together. So it's even more. You don't have a map or a different state to pull stuff off of. You're doing it, you're creating it, and that's really going to mean something. Because in the next few years, I bet you'll see across the United States, they're going to be looking to people like you and the folks you're helping put this curriculum together. Other states are going to want to talk to you on how to develop it and what you did and what worked. So that's really awesome.
Tammy, I do want to thank you for the work you're doing, not only with getting the Black and Latino studies. That means a lot to me because I work in Waterbury, I work in a very urban school, and getting those resources to the students, my 8th grade students that I know will be moving on to high school next year, they deserve those lessons. And when I teach Black History Month, and this week when I taught, you know, some controversial images that are found in Dr. Seuss books, those kids went crazy. They could not believe their eyes. And with teaching something that they really connect to, I see the difference in the students. And we in Waterbury, we were lucky enough to have one 12-year-old student write and illustrate her own picture book called Our First Protest, all about her time spent at the Black Lives Matter protest in Waterbury this summer. She actually wrote it, it got published, and I shared it with my students last week, and they're still talking about it. One of my students asked me if I could read it to his brother. So getting those connections with those students is really what we need, and thank you so much for getting that to them. Also, to the first thing you said before about how many students are struggling, I see it every day. We have probably around 80% of our students have chosen to stay home, and without that connection, we see it. People choose not to come to library, even though they're graded on it. It's just too much for them sometimes. And I personally feel bad, like I just can't fault them because they're in such a crazy scenario where I know that if they were all in person regular, it would be such a different school year. So I just really want to thank you for that work. It's important to all of us.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think you're doing a great job, and being in New Haven, especially with like the social emotional stuff with going on with these kids right now with the distant learning, it's huge. I have a couple kids right now that are just kind of disconnected because of that, as well as, you know, what you're doing with the curriculum. I mean, currently in my school, we have the African American Latinx history, and I would love to get your contact information. I'd pass it along to the teacher that teaches that. Maybe you guys can, you know, give them some ideas, because I know that's a very popular class in my school right now.
Tammy, I can answer your original question too, how I got to history. So I went on a very crazy path, especially to start out with my college career. I started at Naugatuck Valley Community College, and I was a dance major. Talk about going into a job that you can't find any work with. I think that beats history. So when I was done dancing, I went into early childhood education, and I just felt like I wanted to make more of a difference. So I completely switched, went into secondary social studies when I came to Southern. Southern was my third school for my undergrad. So first I went to Naugatuck Valley and I danced there. Then I went to Keene State College in New Hampshire, and I had a dual program that I was a dance major and I was also an early childhood ed major. Then I came to Southern, did my history, realized that I could put all of these different things that I learned together and be the librarian for certified K through 12. So I'm really happy in the K through 8. I feel that I can take my history background, my early childhood education background, and even my dance. You know, we love to dance during story time. We do a lot of fun things, scarf songs, all these other fun things that you bring into, you know, like kindergarten story time. And then you can stay with these kids as they keep growing and growing and growing. So history will definitely be helpful. And I even found a way to make my dance background helpful. So, you know, you can find a career that can incorporate all these things, even if you never imagined it.
That's awesome. And I just wanted to add, actually, I keep telling everybody this. I was just in a program, a webinar yesterday, and I'm in Jumpstart, and it's a early childhood program. I work with young little kids, so cute, so intelligent, so smart, and so funny. And we were talking about race and culture and basically history. Everyone's history is so essential, and it was part of that conversation. And she asked, I forgot the actual question, and I just told everybody that empathy, like as a teacher, since I want to be a teacher, empathy is like probably the most important thing that we could incorporate into the classroom right now. You like as teachers, we have no idea what students are going through at home. We just don't. Like, we can see a bunch of black screens on a bunch of black boxes on the screens. We will never know. And I keep telling everybody this, there are 7 billion people on the earth right now. Those are 7 billion perspectives and histories that we don't know, plus the ones before that. And I just think it's just so important for us, well, in every profession, to understand that there's so much valuable information that everyone knows that we don't know. And it's so important, like opportunities like this, like I'm learning so much just from being here, even if it was like on and off, and I do apologize for that, but like just hearing you all speak about your experiences is just so amazing to me. And like so amazing to me to see how unique each and every one of you are, and how you're able to take a profession and a major like history and make it into something like so magical and so important. And as Daisha was just saying, that like today's society, history is like the only thing everyone talks about. So like, look at that, like the one major that was just so looked down on, it's now just like so valuable and so important now. So it's amazing to see like what it can become. And it was awesome just talking to you all. So thank you.
I would just like to add, to answer your question as to why I chose history. I had a long career getting back to school. I spent over a decade as a furniture salesman before coming back to school. But history was always my first love, and history is, it's not only, it's how we got to where we are, but it's what we use to tell the story of who we are. It's how we define ourselves. And I like to question that, to look into how we tell that story, what we're using to tell that story, and analyze it, to look at it a little bit differently, see if we can learn something new, see if we can find a different way to tell our story.
Well, on that note, I really want to thank all of you for agreeing to participate with Beyond the Nest, and I'm duly impressed with the stories and the responses. There's a great deal of sagacity, I think, in all of your words, and I think we can use this as a great resource to really show, the quality of our students, the intellectual spark, and the achievements as well. And the topic of this event was Beyond the Nest, but I think it's maybe appropriate that it's back to the nest, and you're all very much welcome to return to Southern and return to the nest.
Thank you, Dr. Nakamura. So we didn't know how this was going to go, but I couldn't be more pleased. First of all, to see all your happy faces pop up on my screen. We get, or at least I get anyway, I won't talk Dr. Nakamura necessarily, but I get very possessive of my students. You all become my kids for the time being, that you're with me as my advisees or in my classes, and so I'm very proud of you, and I wish you all the best. We want you to always keep in contact with us. For the students who are here, Tammy, Annabelle, and Marie, I hope this was helpful to you, and you'll give us some feedback and let us know what else that we might do. I hope that I'll see all your happy faces again, and that we can do something like this in the future. So thank you. I'm going to stop the recording now.